Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, I'm going to be showing you guys how I leveled my mage to level 80 in the Royal Part 2 update. So, if you didn't know, the update came out, and it's a pretty big one, as not only has it reworked a few things, like armor and elemental res to the point where they're actually usable, it also revamped the entire Ancestral Legacy tree and added a few more pieces. So we can essentially get to everywhere on the Ancestral Legacy tree except for very specific spots like this one, the one with the big circle, mainly these big circle ones. You can't get to those, but the rest of the tree can be gotten to. So, like for instance, you can get to Lowe's Creation, or you can get to Lowe's Gratitude. You can get to any node on the tree at this point, and you'll get like 6 Ancestral Legacy stones throughout the campaign. Eventually, you're going to get a seventh one, and then an eighth one. This eighth one will be special, and you can place it like wherever on the tree, even if it's not connected, which will allow for a lot of build like creativity. But mainly, the main thing today is just getting your 6 Ancestral Legacy Stones and leveling to 80. So this build, it's mainly built around Arcane Breach. Arcane Breach, if you didn't know, it's this big AoE skill. The whole idea of this build is just level as fast as possible to level 80 and to be as generic as possible. So we're only using Arcane Breach so that your other slot can be open for leveling skills. Because as you know, like I said, you're not going to stay with this build forever. You just want to use it to level. So as like for instance, oh, I want to play a Book Smash build. Well, make sure you have Book Smash in your other bar here, and it will gain passive XP as you use Arcane Breach to kill things. That was a change that they made a while back, which is really nice. I've been leveling Attunement Pulse because I'm going to need it for the build I'm going to play. But yeah, so let's just go over just the strategy. Essentially, you're going to level through the campaign until level 28, which is around when you get to Temple Bottomless Bastion. The reason why Temple Bottomless Bastion is one of the most meta places to level is because it is a mission where you do three uh, breaches in a row. So like three mega breaches, these ones, the Chaos Wave breaches. And it spawns about 400 mobs per zone, which is a lot of monsters during the campaign. And thankfully, Slormancer has a feature that allows you to match the level of the campaign zone to your level, which means as you're leveling, the enemies will level with you and you'll gain a constant supply of experience, which allows you to get to level 80 very quickly in comparison to just, going through the campaign normally. Now, like I said, you're going to have to go through the campaign after this, but what you can do is you can click off the match my level. I'll show you in a second, and it will make the whole campaign a breeze. You just build a bunch of movement speed, right? You just click off match by level. This will be level 27. While you're level 80, you'll blast right past it and you can blast through the rest of the campaign. And that'll be what I'm going to do after this video is done. So let's go over the basics of the build. So the first few levels, you're going to be leveling with Arcane Missile. The first master you want to take is Arcane Funding, because at least one in Arcane Funding, so you can have Arcane Missile at 0 mana when you're at low mana, because you don't really have that much mana sustain early on, which is a big problem early on. And you're just going to essentially level with Arcane Missile. You're going to also grab and go for max stacks into Remnant's Wigman. This will give you a bunch of extra projectiles for free, which is great. And then for the next school, you're going to make sure that you grab Arcanic Tempo, which will give you even more projectiles, right? And then later on, you can grab stuff like Time Lock for single target, but I wouldn't go for Time Lock early on. Go for Elemental Penetration, and then eventually into these other things. But by the time you get down here, you're going to be able to swap into Arcane Breach, which is more important. Now, to swap into Arcane Breach, you need something specific. So when you are leveling as a mage, right? You go through the campaign, you are offered a Reaper. That Reaper is Staff of Ferocious Affinity. Essentially what this allows you, it allows you to scale raw damage based on your mana, and early on that is very strong, as it gives you a bunch of base damage for your Arcanic Missile, right? Because raw damage is turned into skill damage. This is very important as It is the main way you scale your damage early on, is by stacking all of the mana on every single piece of gear, as much flat mana as possible. This also gives you mana per level, and that is your main focus, is just scaling that raw damage modifier. Now, the reason why we do this is just for the early scaling, but then once your Ferocious Affinity eventually levels, this will be after you're in Tempopotamus, by the way. Once that levels, you can swap over to the Primordial Staff of Ferocious Affinity, which allows you to get a bunch of elemental damage based on your max mana. This is very important because Arcane Breach is not a skill damage skill, which means that it does not benefit from the first line from our Ferocious Affinity here. It does not benefit from the raw damage equal to your max mana. It does not benefit from that at all. So you want to upgrade your Ferocious Affinity first. Like I said, this drop that drops in the campaign. You can level it as you play through. And then you'll get access to the Primordial Benediction, which gives you a bunch of elemental damage, which allows you to scale Arcane Breach. I'm also scaling the dot on it, the afflict damage equal to the amount of mana you have left. As you're scaling mana with this build, you'll deal a dot that's bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll go into why that is. Now, Arcane Breach specifically here, the first mastery we want to take is Reap What You Sow. You want to make sure that you have this mastery first, as this will give you a lot of extra max mana. Now, what's really cool is as you are clearing enemies, right, you go into Tempopotamus Bastion and you're trying to kill stuff with Arcane Missile. If you just plop down an Arcane Breach, that will give you a lot of max mana, which then scales the raw damage on the Ferocious Affinity, which then gives you damage for your Arcane Missile. So it'll juice up your Arcane Missile, even if it's not really doing much in terms of damage. And then, of course, you eventually go for Eternal Breach, which makes it take a little bit longer to spawn, but it has increased area. Then you grab Arcane Flux, which gives you a bunch of attack speed for free, which is great because it'll make you to spam Arcane Missile. And then you grab Ephemeral Rift, which gives you even more area. At this point, with area on your gear in these two nodes that give you area, this should reach the whole screen of the Tempopotamus Bastion, which is great. Then the main node that makes this build work is Gravitational Force. Once you grab Gravitational Force and you have upgraded your Reaper to Primordial, so you get that elemental damage, you can essentially stop using Arcanic Missile and just focus on Arcane Breach and then level other stuff in your left slot. And that's about when you become an Arcanic Breach build instead of an Arcanic Missile build. That is like when you change over, is when you specifically have the pull and you have upgraded your Primordial, your Staff of Ferocious Affinity. Now for gearing, things you need to focus on. The first thing that you should focus on is making sure that you get experience gain percentage on your rings. As you're leveling through Tempopotamus, right, and getting items, you want to be, of course, trashing stuff, getting everything ready, selling stuff, getting to the vendors. So specifically, the two vendors you need to know about is the Sell Gold lady. This just unlocks through the campaign, right? You sell your stuff, great. That's how you get gold. And then eventually, you want to go over to the Forge guy and buy the upgrade that allows you to reforge equipment and also salvage equipment. So I can salvage all this equipment, get a bunch of blue stuff, right? And a bunch of yellow stuff, which will allow me to recraft my gear into what I need it to be, which is great. And the first thing you want to do is get that experience gain, because the more experience gain you get, the better, right? Because as you're, leveling up, this will speed up your leveling significantly. Other stuff, like I said, max mana, movement speed, area increased size. Those are the main stats you want to go. I got a little lucky and got max mana multiplier on my helmet. But other than that, it's just mainly attack speed, mana. Some mana on hit works really well, and some life on hit works as well too. But experience gain, mana, movement speed, area size, and like whatever else you can fit on. A little bit of like HP here or there doesn't hurt you. Also, percentage damage over time is really strong because that is scaling your Ferocious Affinities dot, the Affliction, which can do a bunch of extra damage as well. And all of that combined means that you can just level Mage normally. Now, also as well, make sure you're going over to Rick here, upgrading your stuff as you go along, right? Upgrading your stuff like this so that you get the bonuses. And make sure when you pick up items, make sure you're picking up higher item level items. So, like for instance, I've been using most of this gear since like level 40, 50, 60, and now I'm 80. If you don't know, the base stats of items, they scale with your level. So you want to be picking up items that have like high item level first and then crafting on them. You don't want to be crafting on low item level items because it's essentially waste of currency and materials because it's not really worth it. So that's why I would say don't go too crazy with the crafting as you want to save materials for later on for when you're level 80 because when you drop level 80 items and level 78 items and stuff like that, it's a lot more efficient. So that's pretty much it for the build. Uh, like I said, this is just how I leveled it. You could do whatever you want, but this is just how I leveled. A lot of that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go work on some other stuff. And I forgot also as well, here's a snapshot of my Wall of Omen tree for Devoted Scholar. The main thing that's important is just speed gate and maybe the area. Speed gate, the area. Early on, you could grab mana to scale your Ferocious Affinity for damage. This doesn't matter right now. This is just a little bit of extra damage. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just getting the speed, right? So you just move faster. Bye, guys.